Good morning, folks. Welcome to Bulletin Brass. So you can see my microphone this time. I figured I'd bring it in a little closer. I was having to boost the audio in the editing, and you look into the microphone versus me having to fiddle around with the audio, and it probably doesn't sound as good. I figured you didn't care. Anyway, today we're doing something related to hunting, since opening season for firearms just started in Connecticut, or at least is starting shortly. I figured I would talk about something that confused me and then made a lot of sense. Now, it doesn't really apply, I don't think, in Connecticut. I actually have not looked, but I don't believe it applies because I think our rules work a little differently. But the issue at hand is the 350 Legend. Now, first, it's a deceptively named cartridge. It is not 350. It's actually 357 or 355, depending on how you're measuring. If you're measuring the bullet versus the caliber, it's basically a 9mm, really long 9mm. What it really is 9mm straight walled case designed for a short action rifle. It works in an AR, but I don't think that was the primary criteria. It wasn't like a 6.5 Grendel or a 300 Blackout or anything like that. It wasn't. The primary criteria was not, hey, let's improve the AR platform's lethality and range. It was, hey, while we're doing this, this is a modern sporting rifle that is very popular. Let's not work in that cartridge or in that system. So, first, the part that confused me. It's a short range cartridge. It's a big bullet, relatively slow. uh, it kind of seemed like a weird compromise. You didn't gain a whole lot, and I didn't understand why you would do this. It seemed like everybody else was going to these intermediate weight, intermediate diameter bullets to get really good BC, really good SD if you care about that, um, for better energy across a wider range spectrum. 350 Legend throws all that out the window completely. It just is like, nope, we don't give a shit. What it does is have really good energy for the cartridge size at short range. Now, not to the extreme of a 450 or 458 or a 50 Beowulf. This is not a big bore round. What it is a straight walled case that is ballistically, basically a lightweight 30-30. So at 200 yards, it's roughly 950 foot-pounds of energy. That's the FTX load from Hornady. A 30-30, similar load, the same FTX load, not the same bullet, obviously, but the same uh, category from Hornady, so to speak, is 1,300 foot-pounds at 200 yards. So clearly, it's not in the same league, but it's not overwhelmingly lacking. But at 200 yards, you're marginal. I mean, I think the minute you're under 1,000, yes, it's a heavier bullet, so it's got better penetration. That FTX bullet is a great bullet for hunting, but that's about your limit. I wouldn't really want to be shooting past 200 yards on deer. Now, smaller stuff, okay, I could see that, maybe 250, even 300, but ballistically, that's a tough shot with this round. In fact, one of the things that gets talked about is that for most people using this, it's a 100 yard and in cartridge. Because after that, your drop starts to get significant enough that you better know it. You can't be guessing. So, what is the point of the 350 Legend? Why would you take that hit in power and range when there's other options out there? And the answer is, as usual, the government doesn't make sense. Uh, and it kind of does in this sense. I can kind of see their point. I'm not sure I agree, but I understand. A lot of jurisdictions have issues where hunting areas border on non-hunting areas. There'll be neighborhoods, and then there'll be hunting land, and then there's more neighborhoods. And they're trying to limit how far bullets go when people miss. So the idea is, this is a cartridge that at normal deer hunting ranges works great. Most people don't shoot past 100 yards for deer. You don't even have a shot. That just doesn't exist. If you're a Western hunter, this is not the cartridge for you. You need something very different. But for those of us here on the East Coast, particularly places like, well, Ohio has these rules, Pennsylvania, New York, most of New England, right on down through a lot of the South. Even if they don't have those rules, they have terrain that says, hey, you're not going to get more than 100 yards on that deer. Even if you're shooting across a plowed field, it's maybe 100 yards. Fields tend to be smaller because you've got very odd terrain. You've got terrain with lots of hills, uneven. I didn't mean odd in the sense that strange, but odd as in uneven. You don't get these big flat stretches where you get long sight lines. And let's face it, deer are sneaky. They're going to hide. They're going to get in those little creek beds and little dips in the land. And you're not going to have that 200-yard shot most of the time. So for a lot of people, they're very concerned with the short range ability of their round. And they don't care at all about longer. Well, 350 Legend works great at short range. And it is a straight wall cartridge, which certain jurisdictions classify differently. They set it as it's going to be shorter ranged. They're less worried about stray bullets wandering off into the yonder. And they allow it where they wouldn't allow more traditional hunting cartridges. They're not going to allow a 270. They're not going to allow a 243. They're not going to allow a 6.5. And it really opens up your world if you can still do a centerfire rifle cartridge. Now, do I really think there was a need for this versus continue with some of their cartridges? Maybe. I think it's something where their marketing department at Winchester said, hey, most of these options that are on these lists for the states that require this don't work well in semi-auto rifles, modern magazine-fed semi-autos. And we can do better. We have, we're not in 1950 anymore. Ballistics have been better understood. The needs of modern shooters are better understood. The mechanics of a magazine-fed system are better understood. And chemistry is better. Modern powder can do things that older powder could not. So I think they created a round that meets a very, very niche market that is big enough to justify. They think that there's enough market to justify this cartridge, even if it isn't suitable for a big portion of the country. Now, if you're out west, I don't know why you would buy one. If you're in the north central states, zero purpose. If you're in the southwest, zero purpose. But if you're anywhere where it's more built up, where you're hunting in relatively constrained areas, absolutely. I think it's a great option. I definitely see the appeal of having an AR upper with a couple magazines. You only need 5 rounders, right? This isn't a general purpose round. So a couple 5 rounders, you're good. I think it's a perfectly valid option. So that is it. Hopefully you guys had fun with this. I've answered some questions about 350 that other people had. Really, it is a cartridge designed to meet a regulatory need and a practical need, not to be the best. It isn't trying to outperform a lot of things. It's trying to outperform them in its category. And its category is straight-walled small cartridges that fit in smaller rifles. If you have a bigger rifle, there's always a better option. If you don't need a straight wall, there's better options. But if you need a straight wall cartridge to go deer hunting with, and you don't want to carry a large action rifle, 308 size action rifle, there you go. There's your round. Take care, have fun, stay safe, y'all. Say hi. Oof. Oof. Oof.